All right, welcome back to the Spero Means Hope podcast, where we take storytelling to a whole new level by sharing amazing patient stories, interview experts in the community, and share resources for clinicians and students. So tonight we have with us Margo. Hi, Margo.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
Good.
Good. Nice to meet you. Margo is one
You
of our
too.
amazing patients in Austin. So, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? What do you do for a living? And what do you do for fun?
I'm pretty much from Buda. I went to Hayes High School, so I kind of grew up in the area. Um, I left for a little while and went to Texas A&M, and then I came back here to Austin. I know A&M was really fun. Then I came back here to Austin, and I worked for the state, for the Texas Board of Nursing. I worked there for about 17 and a half years. A long time.
Wow. What did you do for the Texas Board of Nursing?
It's basically an admin position, but I work in the department that takes care of all the fingerprints when we have to do background checks on the nurses. All the information has to be processed and put into the system. So there are definitely a lot of nurses in Texas,
Sweet. And
for
what
sure.
what did you study at A&M?
I have a bachelor's of science in psychology.
Ooh, that's really interesting. Oh, cool. And so when you're not working, what do you do for fun?
I'm not really a big crowd person, not really a big party person, but I kind of just like to chill at home or hang out with small groups of friends. I really like, I'm into movies and TV shows and that sort of thing.
Nice. What show are you watching right now?
Oh my gosh, what show did I just watch? I just watched a couple of weeks ago. I finished Designated Survivor.
Okay.
It's on Netflix.
And it was good?
Um, yes, that one was really good. Right now, my physical therapist actually has me watching a Star Wars show. It's on Disney. I think it's called Skeleton Crew.
Ooh.
I've only watched a couple of episodes, but it seems really fun.
Okay. I need to take notes. So Skeleton Crew and then Designated Survivor, right?
Designated Survivor is on Netflix, and then Skeleton Crew is on Disney.
Okay. I'll check. I'm a big TV show person, so I like to take recommendations and then I check them out like recently. So, awesome.
Yeah.
So Margot, what initially brought you to physical therapy?
Oh my gosh, it's been a while. I've actually been a patient at Spero before, the Spero location that I go to the most, before it was actually Spero owned.
Oh,
So I'm coming up on my 6th anniversary,
wow.
but it was pretty much for back pain, which is what initially brought me in. I have cerebral palsy, so my muscles from the spasticity can get really tight, and so it was causing some pain in my back. So that's pretty much what brought me there, but the CP itself has sort of kept me there, but it's been a good thing, a really good thing for me.
Aw. And can you talk a little bit about like cerebral palsy? I know it looks different for a lot of people. So what does it look like for you?
It definitely looks different for a lot of people. So I was born about 3 months premature. My amniotic sac was punctured, and so I didn't have enough fluid anymore, and my lungs weren't developed enough for me to be able to breathe on my own. And so by the time they had figured out what was going on, and by the time I was delivered, I had lost too much oxygen. And so that's what caused the CP. But I actually think that I am very fortunate as far as the level of my symptoms go. I can't walk by myself, but I do use a walker. But other than that, I'm really fairly independent. I live by myself. I ride the bus to go to work. I don't drive, but I do ride the bus. So there's that. I'm trying to think what else. It kind of limits the function in my right arm and my right hand. My right side is more affected than my left. And I've been in physical therapy, especially with Spero, for a long time, but more recently, I believe it was August, I started occupational therapy as well. Surprisingly, I think it's almost harder. I was like, wait
Yeah.
a minute. I was not expecting that.
I'd love to hear like how I guess your journey has been with PT and then with OT now. So when you first started, was it what you thought it would be? Like was it like how has that journey been?
Um, it definitely has become a huge part of my life. And the couple of experiences that I'd had with therapy before coming to Spero was that I was in therapy for maybe 4 to 6 months, and then the insurance company would eventually make me stop, because they're like, well, you're not improving, so we're not gonna pay to send you to therapy anymore. Even though with something like CP, that's not really how it works. But sometimes it's hard for them to kind of get that. But surprisingly, my therapists have all worked, their magic, and all the admin people behind the scenes have made it to where I have been able to stay. So it's been really good.
Mm. What are some of the like difficulties you've had with um exercises or like movement and like things that maybe you're like, oh, I never thought I could do that. Or
Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of where to start. There's so much, but I think as far as difficulty for me, especially as an adult, I feel like my spasticity has kind of increased. That muscle tightness has increased as I've gotten older, which is probably, to be expected with muscles that can atrophy and stuff like that. Um, but that's probably been one of the hardest things, because that muscle tightness also causes a lot of pain and discomfort, which is not really something that I was used to growing up. I didn't have a whole lot of chronic pain. Even that term chronic pain is new for me because I'm not really used to referring to it that way, I guess. But that would be essentially what it is that pain and discomfort from that spasticity has been kind of a journey, so to speak. But being in physical therapy has really made a big difference with that. So I'm grateful for sure.
oh, well, I'm glad it's been able to help you. And that
Yeah.
you found some. You know, sometimes people say like it's pain and torture, like to come to therapy. So
I,
I'm glad you're having a good experience and it's helping you.
there are definitely days like that. You can ask any of my therapists that there are days where I'm just like, you know what? I don't want to do that. I really don't want to do that. So we're not going to do that today. But one of the things that I've tried to remember, especially as an adult, is that I don't necessarily have to be there. I'm there to help my body kind of maintain that ability to move and function. And so, whatever I put into it is what I'm going to get out of that. So, if I'm not going to put that effort into it, then there's really not any point in me being there. So, even if there are days where I'm tired or, I'm just having a rough day and I don't really want to, do those things or be physically active, I try to remind myself, I'm here for a reason. This is just going to help my body and help improve my life and kind of just my overall ability to function as a person.
I like that mindset. It's like taking agency into like your recovery and putting the work into it. I love that mindset.
Yeah.
Um,
Because it's definitely, I mean, it's not a requirement.
no, it is.
It's not a requirement, but it does, it makes a big difference. And especially for me, not even just physically, but just being a part of an environment like that for so long, it's definitely become almost like a family kind of aspect. I spend a lot of time there, especially now that I'm doing both PT and OT. Um, so it's been really fun.
I love that. Oh, looking into your life thus far, what would you say are some of your biggest milestone or something you're really proud of? And it can have to do with CP or be completely unrelated, but what's something you're like, ooh, I'm very proud of this?
Oh my gosh. I had one physical therapist in particular. She was really encouraging, as far as like me being able to do activities that I wouldn't normally think that I could. Things like the adaptive sports, like the rock climbing and the kayaking and the cycling. And at first, I was like, there's no way I could do any of that. And I just remember her encouraging me. She's like, yes, yes, you can. And, sure enough, I think cycling was one of the first things that we tried together. Cycling, kayaking probably has to be my favorite, though. Kayaking is my favorite. And then more recently, I've only done it once. It was really hard. Uh, it was fun, but it was really hard. It was rock climbing. They added the rock wall climbing recently. That's an experience for sure. Hanging on a wall. I think it took me about a half an hour to
Wow.
do the entire thing, but I went all the way to the top. I did need to have, a therapist on either side to help me with moving my legs up, especially with my spasticity and, being that the first time doing something like that, my legs were kind of like, I don't know what you're trying to do.
What are we doing? Why are we
What,
here?
right, exactly. So I kind of needed some help, from my therapist, just kind of moving my legs up as far as being able to get them to the different holes as I went up. But the determination to actually get to the top, was definitely coming from me, even though I had help.
Yeah. And honestly, even without rock climbing is really, really, really hard. So you need to give yourself that credit because
I remember when I came down, there were a lot, I mean, that one particular day, there were a lot of students that had gone with us to help, and one of them was kind of watching me, and she was kind of taking video for me so I could have that for later. And she's like, you were up there for 30 minutes. And I was like, I was. Yeah, it was about a half an hour. It did not feel like, I mean, it felt like I was up there for a while, but it certainly didn't feel like I was up there for 30 minutes for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Margo, navigating life. So you were saying earlier how you're primarily walking with a walker.
Yes.
So as you're like navigating life and in this world with like a mobility device, do you feel like the environment around you is like pretty welcoming to people that have different mobility challenges, or do you feel like society at large needs to be like better educated on what it looks like to have differences in movement?
That's a good question. And I definitely put a lot of thought into that at different times, especially, going to college somewhere like A&M, which is a huge campus. But it is a little bit more enclosed. I think there were only a couple, maybe one or two classes that I had in the 4.5 years that I was there, that there was some kind of mobility issue, either with stairs, lack of elevators and things like that. And, in those instances, they would change things around and change the location of my class or things like that. But I think a lot of it depends on just the environment that you're in and the people around you. And I think a lot of it also has to do with the perspective that you yourself choose to hold, because it's all difficult. It's all challenging and hard, but challenging and hard doesn't necessarily have to be detrimental, or it doesn't necessarily have to be a setback and things like that. I feel like society definitely has a lot to learn, and I feel like there's still a long way that we could go as a society, and as far as being able to understand and support people with different abilities. But I think overall it's not bad. Like I said, a lot of it just has to do with your mindset.
I love that, and hearing you point out the places in which we can grow, but then also saying that for the most part it's a positive experience. Like that makes me happy. And as like a optimist, like glass half full kind of person, I talk to people often and I ask this question. It's always interesting to see what people answer. Um, and people have different experiences. But every time someone mentions that, for the most part, it's been good, I'm like, okay, there's hope. We're doing something right.
We're
We're moving
moving in the right
forward.
direction.
Yes, that gives me hope. Even though I wish that was the experience for everybody or 100% of the time.
And I think even when I face, challenges with that, I think it's not necessarily because people don't want to, or they're trying to make us feel left out or something like that. I think it's more, especially when it comes to other people being helpful in your environment, is that they don't understand. So you kind of have to be the one that's willing to say, hey, can you help me with this, or can you open that door, or whatever the case may be, which is honestly something that is not my strong suit, especially when it comes to strangers, like asking for help and things like that. But sometimes it's just, you have to do what you have to do.
Yeah. But it is hard to ask for help.
Yeah.
Mhm. Do you think there are any any misconceptions that people have about cerebral palsy?
I think people are just curious, especially because most people don't realize that, like you said, it affects each individual person very differently. There are a wide range of difficulties and challenges that each person can have, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. Most of them are like, oh, you can't walk. Well, yes, I can't walk, but there's a lot more to it than that. Maybe not so much for me, because with those challenges and setbacks, really, it is severe because I don't have the ability to walk, but I do have the ability to speak, the ability to feed myself and bathe myself and dress myself, and all of my cognitive abilities are still intact, where for a lot of people, they don't have the ability to speak or communicate, or there's some people that are also blind, just things like that. So I feel very fortunate in that aspect, and I just think it's a lot for me to take in, and I'm used to those things, so I feel like it's pretty common for people to have those misconceptions and to get confused. um I think one of the biggest misconceptions I feel like I get for me personally is that because I am so independent, which is a good thing, right? That's great. I have a full-time job. I live by myself. I can't drive, but I can get myself, to doctor's appointments, to therapy, to work, and things like that. But I think and feel like a lot of times, because I have the ability to do those things, and because I have that independence, people kind of assume that because I can do those things, that, oh, I can do everything. I can do everything by myself. I'm like super, independent. And a lot of people, a lot of my friends, just as being supportive and uplifting, you're like, oh, you're a superwoman. And I'm like, kind of, but not really. There are a lot of things that I still need help with, especially just being in therapy as an adult right now in this, 6 years that I have been. One of the things that I have noticed as I've gotten older in that time is I don't have as much energy as I used to. Like, it always takes me more energy than the average person to do anything, to take a shower, to make my bed, to unload the dishwasher and things like that. But one of the things that I have noticed is, as I've gotten older, I don't necessarily have as much energy as I used to. which happens for everybody, right, as they get older. But I think, especially for individuals with something like CP, that your aging process is almost accelerated a little bit in a way. So you tend to lose a lot of those things, just like anybody would as they get older. But I think it happens a little bit faster than you would expect it to, or than you would like it to. So it's definitely harder for me to do the little things than it used to be. I definitely used to be a whole lot more social outside of home than I am now, but I think a lot of that just has to do with my energy level.
What are some things you're looking forward to, or any goals you have in the next year or next 5 years?
One of the things more recently is the walk and roll event that Spero does with the Cerebral Palsy Foundation is coming up here in a couple of weeks, and that's something that I normally do. I think this will be my 4th year. It's the 5th year of the event, but I think it's the 4th year that I've done it. And each year I've kind of had a goal for myself to kind of improve the time it takes for me to finish.
Yay!
And by finish for me is the entire mile. Like
Wow.
I don't necessarily have to do that, right? Nobody's gonna make me do the entire mile.
Hmm.
That's just a goal that I have for myself. And every year it's kind of like, okay, can I do better than I did last year? Can I do it faster than I did the year before, even if it's by 30 seconds or 2 minutes or something like that. So last year, I think I finished the entire mile in 55 minutes.
Wow.
And
That's
and
awesome.
that was impressive. Last year, I didn't even think that I was going to be able to finish the entire thing at all. And I did, and I was able to do it still in under an hour. So I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be like this year. I guess we'll just have to see. But I do still have that goal of trying to do it a little bit faster than I did the year before. I think all of my therapists have developed a sense that I like to be in competition, not necessarily with other people. I like to be in competition with myself. Which is helpful for them when they're, having me do different exercises or different things. They'll be like, okay, this time let's try to get this many taps on the blaze pods in 2 minutes, or stuff like that. They use that in order to motivate me, my own competitive edge. They use it as far as a tool in order to keep me motivated and keep me going.
That's awesome. I think competition is a really good motivator, but I do like that specifically you're just competing with yourself. It's just you trying to better yourself and not even looking left and right. And so I love that.
But I've definitely learned, I think, especially in the last year or so, I definitely, my mindset has kind of started to shift to, okay, I don't necessarily have to do better all the time, or I don't necessarily have to meet these giant goals, all the time, or do better every day than I did the day before. Sometimes it's just the best that I can do is enough. And sometimes the best that I can do is different every day.
Yeah. I like that. The best that you can do is enough. That's a good motto to live by. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Margot, if you had a thank you list, like if there's any shout outs you want to give to anybody that has been like instrumental in your journey, um, and it can be like therapy related, but also just life related. Like who would you want to send shout outs to?
Oh my gosh. My mom for sure. Um, my mom for sure. Both of my parents, but my mom for sure. There was, especially when I was younger, I went through several major surgeries and things like that, and that was a lot for me, obviously, but it was also a lot for my parents to deal with, and they were um, always kind of a big motivator as far as staying positive when I had to go through things like that. I have to say, my sister, I come from a big family. There's a lot of us, but I am particularly close to my sister, Megan. She's just a couple years older than I am. And she used to live here in Austin with me, but now for about 5 or 6 years, she's lived in Idaho, which is which is far away from Austin. Um, but we still maintain that connection. We still have those conversations almost daily, and she's always kind of been this silent motivator and this silent cheerleader almost in that encouragement and being able to do things that I wouldn't necessarily believe for myself that I could do. Um, and then just all of my therapists have been really incredible and really great. There's a couple of therapists that I had in the very beginning. Like I said, some of them had moved on and gone to other places, and even though they're not still here with me, they're not still actively, my therapist, they are still a part of my life. We still talk to each other occasionally. We still have, conversations. I keep them up to date about how therapy is going and things like that. That's why I think for me, being in therapy, especially at Spero, because I've had therapy at different places, and Spero is definitely set apart. I think in that, yes, the body is important when it comes to therapy, physical therapy or occupational therapy, but I think one of the things that I noticed the most, especially when I first started, was that it's not just about the body, it's about the entire person. They care about you as a whole person and not just how do we fix your body. Whereas I've been to other clinics before, and it's not that they don't care, but the atmosphere and the vibe and the level of compassion is definitely is different. It's different, and so I think that makes a big difference for me. Um, so I definitely made a lot of friends, in my journey at therapy.
That makes me so happy to hear. Yeah. It's the best thing.
It's been really fun, and I know that you follow me on Instagram, so
Yes.
you've seen my different posts and things like that, and it's just a lot of fun to be able to share that with people, but especially when it comes to therapy, share that with people that understand what that's like on a different level than the average person may not understand because they don't have that insight into disabilities like that or neurological conditions like that. It's just a different level of care and compassion. And for me, it's made a world of difference.
I love it. Margot, is there anything I haven't asked you about that you wanted to mention?
Like I said, having CP and having a disability in general, especially a disability that I've had my entire life, which is a little bit different than being injured, right? Because for me, it was more of I never learned to walk. I never, had those abilities. And it's a lot, and it can be intense, but I think for me, just remembering that it all has a purpose, even though I may not understand all of it right now. I have CP for a reason. God chose me to have CP for a reason. I may not know what that reason is specifically. I may not understand necessarily why he chose me or what exactly I'm supposed to do with that. But it's definitely a gift. It's a gift. It's not any punishment, which I think there was a time where I wasn't sure about that. I felt like because I was so different that it was a punishment, but I have since learned, you know, and sometimes you learn the hard way that it's, it has a purpose. It's not a punishment. It is a gift, because I would definitely be a completely different person if it wasn't for my CP. Yes, it is a part of me. It is a part of who I am. It's not all of who I am, but it's a large part of who I am, and has influenced, I think, in a positive way, the person that I've become.
Love that. Thanks for the amazing parting words, Margot. And thanks again for taking the time to sit down with me and have this conversation. And I enjoyed listening to you and listening to your insight on things. And then your journey and how therapy has impacted your journey, but then also the other things that make you you. So thank you so much for taking your time to have this conversation with me.
Thanks for having me. It was fun getting to talk to you.
Yay!